Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by ShareFile from Citrix. Secure file transfer built for business. Visit sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter Twist for a free 30-day trial. And by New Relic. Visit newrelic.com/twist and see why thousands of developers worldwide don't deploy without it.
Hey everybody, it's This Week in Startups. We're here at the All Things D conference. It's the 11th edition. Kara Swisher and Walt Mossberg have been nice enough to let me do some interviews here, and boy, do I have a great one for you. Matt Mullenweg, the founder of WordPress, which is now 10 years old, and powers a large double-digit percentage of publishing on the web, is with us. He's going to talk about scaling a company and what it's like to hit the 10-year anniversary of WordPress. Stick with us. It's going to be an amazing episode.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
This is part one of Jason's interview with Matt Mullenweg. Part two is coming soon.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups, the show where we talk about creating companies, putting a dent in the universe, making products that people love and that help people have better lives, lead richer lives. And boy, one of those things is the World Wide Web, the internet. And one of the key pieces of the infrastructure is, of course, content management systems, the ability to publish content to the web, which was extremely complicated in the first Web 1.0 portion of the web, but then got easier, in large part thanks to Matt Mullenweg, who created the most powerful content management system in the history of the internet, known as WordPress. And today on the program, we're going to talk about that 10-year journey that he's still on, living 290 days of the year outside of San Francisco with his 170 employees around the world, making software that has literally powered most of the important sites on the internet at some point in time, and also lots of things going on in the industry, like Tumblr getting bought for $1 billion by Yahoo, which many people consider a contemporary. And we're going to talk about that and scaling a company right after these very important words from our sponsors. Stick with us. Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis. What an amazing episode we're having here, and it's brought to you by my friends at New Relic. They make your web and mobile apps faster by monitoring real user experience, code-level app performance, and of course your server resources. And I get these emails myself. We use it at LaunchTicker and This Week in Startups, and 40,000 customers, including Skullcandy, Spotify, Nike, Zillow, and Vonage, all use New Relic. New Relic is a great company. They're growing. They're doing tremendous. I know some of the VCs involved. It's an amazing, amazing company. And you can see it's very simple how it works. Here are some of the screenshots. Very simple. You see the page rendering time, the network, the web application, how long it's all taking to load. And I can see right down to what Ruby's taking and really diagnose why my network is either slow or maybe it's my hard drive or it could be the CPU. Just great stuff. And if you want to get this gorgeous This Week in Startups t-shirt, you just have to go and sign up for New Relic. And it's free to sign up, super easy, no credit card. Again, no credit card required. Go to newrelic.com/twist. New Relic, RELIC.com. For those of you driving right now, do not type newrelic.com/twist while you're driving down the 405 freeway, or the 101. Pull over to the side of the road and do this immediately. No, don't pull over the side of the road. Do it when you get home or to the office. newrelic.com/twist, newrelic.com/twist. No credit card required, and you get this gorgeous free This Week in Startups t-shirt. Yes, they understand our audience. They appreciate the This Week in Startup audience enough to make these gorgeous t-shirts. That should tell you all you need to know about this company. They're on it. They're sponsoring This Week in Startups because they love startups, they love growing with startups, and they love making startups faster. The best feature for your software, as Google and Marissa Mayer used to always say, is speed. That's the best feature you can add. That's why Marissa at Yahoo, the first thing she did was make the homepage faster, make email faster. Make your products faster, make them more stable through using New Relic, newrelic.com/twist, newrelic.com/twist, and thank at New Relic on your Twitter account. Let's get back to this very important episode. Hey, everybody, welcome back. Thank you to my sponsors, and thank you to Kara and Walt for allowing me to do some great interviews here at the All Things D conference. What an amazing view. Hey, what an amazing founder. Welcome back to the program, Matt Mullenweg.
I'm very excited to be back over 300 episodes later.
Yeah, you were on episode 26 at some event I think you were hosting or somebody was hosting. It wasn't my event. It was in San Francisco at some hotel.
It was like a business of software thing.
Yeah.
Like Joel Spolsky spoke.
That's what it was. It was Joel's, right?
Yeah.
So it was Joel Spolsky's event, and I interviewed you. And we
was a lot of
recorded
fun.
it. That was a lot of fun. That was 4 or 5 years ago. Boy, has a lot changed for you during that time. And in a lot of ways, a lot hasn't changed. When we met 10 years ago, you started an open source project called WordPress.
Mm-hmm.
What was the start of the project? Like, how did it actually get started? What was the moment of creation? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's actually documented on the internet, which is kind of fun. There was a fellow, we were using this project called B2. There's a fellow in England named Mike Little who was also hacking on it. And I had done a blog post saying, hey, the software was abandoned. This is kind of what I'd love to see in the next version. He left a comment and said, hey, if you're serious about working on this, I'd love to work with you. And that was kind of the conception,
Right.
WordPress. And then over the next few months, until May 27, 2003, we just kind of hacked on it and started to think, well, how can we make the installation easier? How can we make it more usable? How can we make it comply with web standards? And then 10 years and 2 days ago,
Wow.
did the first release, 0.7.
Amazing. And you've been at it for 10 years.
Okay.
Now 10 years into this, what percentage of websites are running on WordPress? Because I've heard different statistics on this, but it's pretty staggering.
Right about 18% is the latest.
18% of websites are running WordPress, either the open source version or on your hosting software.
I wonder what it was last time we chatted. I don't recall.
Well, who knows? I mean, would it have been higher or lower? I don't know.
It would have been probably in the 2 to 3% range.
Yeah. And so just so people get a conception of this, like, there's a lot of options to host a website. Mm-hmm. Why do you think WordPress has become the dominant one? What do you think at its core has made it sustainable, scalable, and just to take this massive amount of market share? Because there's nobody else who has more market share.
No, it's the largest of any CMS. There are more websites that don't have a CMS yet. So there's still a lot of growth there.
Yeah.
But I would say that we focus a lot on the author. Mm-hmm. So having a great, easy experience for them. A lot of people find they can use WordPress really easily without needing training or anything like that. But if they do want training, I mean, there's now hundreds of books written, tons of tutorials, and tens or hundreds of thousands of people who know WordPress really well. Like, they build sites for clients and things. And then the second part is the flexibility. I mean, there's over 25,000 plugins, thousands of themes. So pretty much anything you could imagine or want to do, there's a plugin for that.
Right.
Like, there's an app for that.
Right.
And so people just enjoy that flexibility. Like, you don't have to be a coder to be able to create a really beautiful and customized site.
Right. And the majority of people pay your company WordPress, because for people who don't understand, there's a WordPress open source project, which is the software, but then you have a company, WordPress.
Called Automattic.
Called Automattic, right, that hosts WordPress and other services. But majority of people pay you $0.0.
Yes. I was about to say, you said majority. I was like, well, not quite. But you're right. It's because you don't need to pay us to use the software and have a great experience.
Right. So you guys make money how?
We're still figuring that out to some
Right.
extent. But on WordPress.com, we have a number of upgrade services, essentially.
Right.
So you can get a $99 or $299 a year package.
Right.
Gives you a domain, videos, extra space, all the good stuff.
The hosting stuff. You don't have to go get your own server set up and
Exactly.
pay somebody else.
But also some cool integrations. Like, we did a great integration with Typekit, so you can customize the typography of your site really easily.
Right.
Custom designs that are sort of exclusive and only available if you pay. And some percentage of the users upgrade, and that supports the business by and large. We also have some other smaller businesses, but the main is that consumer.
You had the
subscription
spam business, right? That was a big one. The comment spam
Kismet
business.
anti-spam,
Yeah.
VaultPress backup and security, our VIP services, which are sort of
Right.
high-end publishers.
That's me. I'm in
And-
there.
Yep.
Talkhandis.com.
Your VIP.
Yeah.
And then finally, PollDaddy, which does polls and surveys.
And so 10 years in, it's a pretty sustainable business, though. I mean, you make tens of millions of dollars from what I've heard. I don't have the exact number, but it's a pretty big business, but you haven't focused on revenue, or have you? Because it feels like you're somewhere in between.
Yeah, I think that you don't get to those levels without focusing on revenue a little bit.
Right.
But I wouldn't say it's a focus of the company. We're still very much focused at this point on scaling the product.
Right.
I would say that blogging and publishing in general is a lot of things we haven't figured out yet.
Huh.
Still, the majority of people that start a blog aren't using it, a year later,
Right.
or even a month later. And so that's really where we focus the vast majority of the technical resources at the company, to the detriment, actually. I think that one of the mistakes I made as an entrepreneur, one of the many, was not putting more people both in support and on the tech side of making the experience of buying things, what we call the store,
Right.
better.
Ah.
Because that is part of the user experience as well.
Right. And you have a 10-year-old platform, so since that time, a lot of people have come out, like Tumblr came out and made it. You could say Tumblr has maybe 5% of the features, of 10% of the features max of WordPress, but they made it very simple, and they didn't get more users, or did they get more users? I don't know. Ultimately,
Depends on how you count it.
I see. So explain that. Yeah, how would you?
They don't break out activity numbers. So for signups, I think they have more signups than WordPress.com.
Right.
But I don't know if that translates into more posts or anything. I would say that it's been an incredibly successful service, and partially due to the simplification that you said.
Right.
Like making it easier for people to say they don't have to write. They can reblog or curate content as well as create it themselves.
I mean, that, to me, having been involved in blogging at the same time you got involved in the 2003 timeframe, 2002 timeframe, should everybody have a blog, or is it too difficult? Because, it sort of felt like, my God, if everybody had a blog, like, we'd all be busy writing them and nobody would be reading them. Did blogging hit some sort of natural ceiling? And then Tumblr with sort of calling it blogging, but all you're really doing is hitting reblog and not even writing anything, just harding, and you have a blog.
People writing. Just like there's a lot of people writing on Twitter.
Twitter, you definitely have people writing, but on Tumblr, it did seem like when they talk about 50 billion things being posted a month or whatever it was, the number, I think we all know in our hearts, like 90% of that is somebody just hitting the reshare button or heart. Like, that's not really, to me, publishing something original.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting to look at the iterations of social networks, including Facebook. Yeah. Every time Facebook redesigns the profile, it looks a little bit more like a blog.
That is
like
true.
With a sidebar and like a stream of posts, essentially.
Right.
And so I don't have traditionally, especially early days of blogging, there was sort of an attempt to define it around like you're writing things, it's an original voice, it's, unfiltered, it's not edited, those sorts of things. But I've always thought of it as really expansive. Right. If it is just a photo you like and you want to reshare, cool.
Right.
If it's a picture of your food you took of, that's cool.
Right.
If it's a song you listen to on Spotify, that's cool too.
Right.
So fundamentally, though, it's about putting something out there to share with a group of people.
You built, though, a very powerful system for the highest end publishers and even average ones. But then social came. I mean, if people don't remember, but when you started in 2003, I mean, this is pre-Facebook opening up to the public. It was still only for colleges.
It didn't exist.
You didn't exist, right? And Twitter certainly didn't exist. And now you have those social things. Do you feel like social took a little of the momentum of blogging, and then now it feels like Twitter is becoming a blog platform as well by exposing the media objects in tweets?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of worry that social would take sort of blogging away. In fact, our big competitor at the time was a company called 6 Apart.
Right.
And they did a product called Vox, which was kind of a hybrid social network blog. Do you remember it?
I do remember it. It was a disaster.
It didn't go well for them, I don't think.
No, it was an unmitigated disaster. I mean, I know that you're so nice. I mean, that's one of the things I've been struck by. You've been such a nice force in publishing since I've met you for 10 years. Like,
Thank you.
Just very consistently, like, very positive about it. But I can unequivocally say Vox was the death of MovableType. Everybody knows that.
Well, we decided not to go in that direction.
Right.
Because, well, one, we were very small at the time, and it seemed like trying to build another social network would be distracting to sort of what we were core about doing.
Yeah.
But two, and this turned out being true, is that social networks are a distribution point for blogs. So the social networks will change over time.
Right.
It was
They're
Facebook
transient
and MySpace.
in a way, aren't they?
They are, although, now we have Facebook, which looks like it's one of the companies that'll be around 10, 20 years from now.
Do you believe that? I mean, do you actually use Facebook, or do you find like people use it for the first couple of years and then you finish your graph And it feels to me like the prize for finishing a graph is you kind of close the book and you're done.
I use and like Facebook on a regular basis.
Really?
Yeah. I think what they built is very impressive. But the cool thing about it is that these social networks, particularly Twitter, drive a ton of traffic to blogs, and in fact,
Right.
sort of put a second wind of readership to blogs. And you don't need to choose. You can post to your WordPress, and it goes to Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook
Automatically.
automatically. And that's awesome, because then wherever your readers are, whatever app they're using that day or anything,
Right.
they can still get your content and come
So-
back to your site.
So when MovableType, which was your big competitor,
Absolutely.
and people I think people kind of dismissed you in the early days to MovableType. MovableType was like the serious company, and you were like this, kid who was doing an open source project.
Yeah.
Why do you think that you just excelled and just ran past them? I mean, they have no percentage of the market now. I mean, that company's just gotten clobbered. Is it consistency of leadership? I mean, you
It's
must have
hard
studied
to
it.
say.
Was it the distraction of Vox?
I think that there were a couple of things. I mean, they had 4 platforms: LiveJournal, TypePad, MovableType, and Vox. I think that business-wise, early on, they had sort of a misstep with the relicensing of MovableType, where they changed how the licensing worked. That was actually probably the first tipping point for WordPress. Was a lot of MovableType users were unhappy with the licensing change and what they'd have to pay to upgrade to the new version, and ended up switching to WordPress instead.
Yeah, they wanted everybody to pay to get the new MovableType license.
Sort of. They changed it
Yeah.
to try to, I think, extract more money from businesses, basically
Right.
basic business 101 price discrimination. But it ended up catching up a lot of personal users as well, who all had blogs and could write about on how happy they were.
Right.
And
And it was thousands of dollars, I think, or something like.
no,
Hundreds?
usually not that much. Actually, a great deal for the software, which
Right.
was very good, especially at the time.
But you went free.
Always been free,
Always
and
a
always
free
focused
option.
a lot
Yeah.
on the simplicity of the install.
Right.
And finally, I think it's also just that because they were the pioneer, they took a lot of arrows.
Yeah.
Our path was definitely easier because of the things 6apart did before we got there.
Right.
Getting people comfortable with blogging, getting businesses comfortable with that as a publishing mechanism.
Now let's talk about the licenses. You've had some controversy around licenses as well, with regard to being really open. You're a big proponent of open. If you create something, share and share alike.
Specifically, the GPL license.
Yes. So explain what GPL is to somebody who wouldn't know.
Sure. It stands for the GNU Public License.
Yeah.
And it is basically a license that has 2 things. One, what you said eloquently, share and share alike.
Right.
So if you get GPL software and you modify it and you want to redistribute it, it also needs to have the same freedoms attached with it. And those freedoms are kind of like a bill of rights for a user, where you, as much as me, have rights to WordPress that cannot be taken away, inalienable rights.
Wow.
The right to use it for any purpose, right to resell it, right to rename it, right to redistribute it, right to be able to open the hood and modify it. Things that you don't get with proprietary software, and you don't even get with all open source software. So that's powerful. And ultimately, that's
So
something that
what's-
even if our business changed,
Yeah.
couldn't take that away from you.
What would be an example where somebody built something on top of WordPress and the GPL license and wanted to maintain control over it, monetize it, and not share and share alike? Because this did come up.
Sure. Well, a lot of people are confused because it has this Bill of Rights attached to it, that necessarily means that it has to cost $0. And that's not true. So, for example, if you go to a Woo Themes or a Studio Press or any of these folks who sell themes, you go to the site, you plunk down, say, $75, you download this theme, and you can use it on your site. It's just like buying something on any other service. It happens to be GPL. So if you wanted, you could redistribute that, and they couldn't say you can't do that. But the reality is that most people don't, because
Right.
they want to support the creator, they want the supports, they want access to the forums, everything that's part of their service. Early on, especially, people were very confused about that because they thought, because we give away things for free, that there was no possibility to build a business on GPL, when in fact, it allows you to build a business probably with more rights and freedoms than you would on any other platform.
So I make 100 beautiful templates. They have to carry the GPL license, which means somebody who wanted to redistribute them and create another collection or just modify them 10% could then go sell them themselves or make them free.
And sure, people do. People rip it off. But
And
to be
people rip it
honest,
off.
people rip off proprietary things as well.
Yeah.
Even
So
they
you
rip
took
off
a-
things with DRM. So
Yeah.
there's some technicalities, but what we do from our community is we
Yeah.
only promote things that are what we call that are 100% GPL, so that the entire package provides the same freedoms that we do.
So that means if, unlike, say, the App Store, where there's a lot more control and command center where they're approving everything, it's a really different model that you've taken than, say, Apple's App Store.
Probably the closest analogy would be like OS 10. There is an app store. There's an official repository where you can download plugins and themes.
Sure.
But if you wanted, you could get something from someplace else and run it. There's nothing stopping you from it.
On Apple?
On OS 10.
On OS 10, on your
Yes.
desktop computer.
On your desktop computer. So
Right.
there's an app store, but you can also run whatever you want.
But the world is going more towards iOS functionality, where there's command and control.
Yeah.
Your app has to be approved. This is a disturbing trend in your mind?
Absolutely.
Why is it disturbing? Why should users care? Because Steve Jobs, rest in peace, he really felt like users shouldn't have these freedoms and that these freedoms ruined user experience. You think the opposite. Why?
Well, ultimately, it's an idea that I'm capable as an adult for making decisions for what I run on my devices. And as someone who loves to code and hack on things, I also want to be able to do that
Right.
and have the freedom to modify how things work. I understand the reasons why Apple sort of took the way they did. They wanted to have a secure experience. You know, security is a huge problem that's plagued PCs, particularly Windows PCs. Plagued is the perfect word. I would
Yeah.
say it's a big part of the death of them. It's
Right.
because your parents get a virus and they have no idea how to fix a computer.
Right.
And honestly, they probably can't.
Right.
Or on iOS, they never do. Distribution and payment, so there's a control there. Also, curation of content. They wanted the iPad and iOS to be known for certain things and not for certain things.
Right.
Like adult content. There's
They
no
don't
adult
want any
apps.
porn. You can't get any porn on an iPad. I mean, except through the browser, which is
Sure.
completely open.
So I understand that, but there's also the competition from Android, which is a lot more open. Not
Right.
perfect, but a lot more. And
And Android devices are outpacing iOS devices, almost 10 to 1 now.
They
in
are.
activations.
that doesn't necessarily mean that Android's going to win, but I think that it does mean that Apple will become more open over time. That's my hope, at least. The
And-
cool thing about us existing in the marketplace isn't that there aren't also proprietary alternatives, like say a Squarespace or a Wix or something.
Or
But it's
Tumblr.
or Tumblr. It's that we're able to pressure the proprietary alternatives to be more open than they might otherwise.
And so it's created a certain equilibrium. Like if you really want a simple, you trade off extensibility for simplicity or simplicity for extensibility.
Yeah, people often trade freedom for convenience. And I don't think they should have to.
Right. But it is challenging. I mean, you have had spam issues in WordPress.
Sure.
All blog platforms have. Easier if it was a closed system, wouldn't it be?
No.
You don't think so?
No, not at all. I see. For people hosting their own blogs and other
Yeah.
so yes, for WordPress.com, we can control spam very effectively.
Right.
In fact, Google says we're one of the best out there.
Yeah.
For people running the software themselves, yes, absolutely. I can't turn the switch off on every WordPress blog in the world.
All right. So when we get back from the commercial break, I want you to talk about what you thought the moment you heard Tumblr been sold for such an extraordinary number, well over $1 billion, when we get back from this important message. Hey, everybody. What a great episode we're having here. And let me just pause for the cause and say thank you to ShareFile by Citrix for sponsoring This Week in Startups, and most of all for designing a beautiful, great product that's designed for business to send files of almost any size securely, access files from any computer or mobile device. We use it here at This Weekend and launch to share files. You can request that files get uploaded to a specific folder from your clients or your partners like we do. You get email alerts when somebody does that, so you don't have to check into the system and see if they're there or not. You just get an email alert, and you can share very large video files. We use it here, and you can set very granular. What I love is you can set these very granular permissions, and that's key for us. So we know that these people can access these files. We see the audit trail. Very important. You can imagine with document lockers, if you were doing something like an M&A deal or an acquisition or your corporate documents or contracts, very important to keep track of those things and who's editing them, who's touching them. Sharefile, go to sharefile.com, click on the radio microphone button, and use the promo code TWIST. That's right. Go to sharefile.com, click on the radio microphone button, and use the promo code TWIST, as in This Week in Startups, TWIST. No credit card required, 30-day free trial, and you can join the Sharefile Twist Club. What that means is you will get the top 10 questions ever asked on this program in your Sharefile. All you have to do is sign up for Sharefile using the promo code TWIST, and then request a file to sharefile@launch.co. So sign up using the promo code TWIST. Then when you open up your Sharefile, just click the request a file link and email sharefile@launch.co, and we will put that file right there in your Dropbox, and you'll have it for life. Okay, that's it. Let's get back to the program. Welcome back. We're here at All Things D. Matt Mullenweg is our guest, the founder of WordPress. He's 10 years and 2 days into his journey, and shortly before the 10th anniversary, Tumblr, which I think that's about 5 years old or so. How many years old was it? 4 or 5? Sold to Yahoo for over $1 billion. You guys have been the object of a lot of different large companies, lots of rumors, many times that people wanted to buy you. Without getting into those, what did you think when you heard Tumblr was sold for such a large number? You did write a blog post about it.
Yeah. First thought was bittersweet.
Yeah.
Right. It's and what I said was it's great to see, what the folks behind the service are going to do with the new resources, both corporate, like under the aegis of Yahoo, but also the personal resources.
Right.
The money they made from it.
Right.
I'm curious to see what they'll do for the next thing in 5
Yeah.
and 10 years down the line. It's a creative group of folks. Bitter because I think that they had a bigger opportunity. And I think that, honestly, even though $1.1 billion seems like a lot, especially if they're not making that much revenue,
Right.
The opportunity is much, much larger than that. And so
Yeah.
they sold for too little, in my opinion.
They could have kept going.
Sure. Well, no one knows what's going on internally.
Right. They were losing a lot of executives.
Sure, don't know what it means organizationally or finance-wise or anything
Right.
like that. And so no one can really quarterback that call for another entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And ultimately, there's no entrepreneur.
Because we don't have complete information.
You know this. Like,
Yeah.
you don't make that decision lightly. Like, it's your
Yeah.
child. It's your
It's
baby.
hard.
You're
Yeah.
passionate about it.
Right.
So it's going to be a very deliberate decision regardless. And it's very impressive that Marissa was able to convince David Karp, who's a great entrepreneur, to go for it. I
Right.
think it speaks to her charisma as well.
What do you think happens? Companies always claim they're not going to fuck with the asset.
Uh-huh.
And you laugh because they always fuck with the asset.
You've been around the block longer than me.
Yes, you get a certain amount of time for them not to fuck with the asset, and then they eventually do. How long do you give it at Yahoo before Tumblr gets fucked with? Because they did say, we're not going to fuck with it.
Yeah.
That was like the first thing they said.
Yeah, they said we won't screw it up in the press release, which is
Yeah.
impressive.
Well,
not a word
Marissa's a
you see
unique
often.
executive. I mean, you respect Marissa.
Yes.
So she's unique. So maybe she won't. You think that we've reached a new moment in entrepreneurship where maybe because of the YouTube acquisition or some of those, some companies actually have figured that out, like don't screw with it, leave it on its own. Instagram, another one.
I think it's tough.
Yeah.
Leadership changes, priorities change, costs change. These things can all affect the future of a acquired product.
Yeah.
You've seen it from both sides. I've
Yeah.
only seen it from the outside. But
Right.
So any of that is challenging. I think Yahoo's acting smarter than they have in the past. If they're smart, they won't try to push any advertising. I would have, if I were them, I would remove the current advertising.
Yeah.
And just let it grow as a user product
Why do you think they bought
for
it?
at least a couple more years.
Why do you think they bought it?
I don't know. What do you think?
I was trying to figure that out. I mean, they have not. Yahoo has not stood for user-generated content ever.
Well, to be fair, they had Flickr, Delicious, Upcoming.
Okay, right. Yeah, they bought some of those assets and
before
screwed them
that,
up.
Yahoo Groups, GeoCities.
bought GeoCities.
Yahoo Groups was eGroups.
Was eGroups. So I think they have bought that stuff, but they also kind of killed it. They never really got it right. They've
Some of
never
them
been
really
good
atrophied.
at community.
Yeah.
I mean, Flickr after it got bought, Delicious after it got bought,
It's cool for a few years.
GeoCities. Yeah,
Is-
but they wound up killing those things. They just have never had in their DNA a really good job at building community.
I think in the past the priorities have changed.
Yeah.
I'm sure they went into each of those with the right intentions.
Hmm.
And in some cases, grew them hugely beyond what they were. I mean, I
Right.
think e-groups to Yahoo groups
Yes.
grew incredibly.
Flickr, who knows?
Flickr, I'm sure,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, because Flickr was having a lot of scaling issues.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
They probably got tens of millions of dollars of resources that they wouldn't have otherwise.
That's true.
It just, at some point, Flickr was not the thing they were working on anymore.
Yeah.
Perhaps because it wasn't monetizing to a level. And they shifted focus.
Do you think they bought it because native advertising is so huge that, or becoming so huge in the minds of advertisers that it's the natural native advertising home? Do you think that was their drive?
I really like native advertising, like the idea of something where the ad looks just like the thing that you actually want to get.
Right.
That's what's beautiful. I mean, AdWords is native advertising.
It is.
Um,
They look like search results.
They look like search results.
In fact, so much so that most people don't know their search results. They don't know the difference in some cases.
for better and worse.
Yeah.
But also, like a magazine, the ads look like the other pages of the magazine.
They're beautiful.
Yeah, they can be.
Yeah.
So I think that's a perfectly natural way to go. And one of the most beautiful things about Tumblr is just the way the dashboard works. That infinite scroll, people get completely caught up in it.
Yeah.
And so, if every 10th thing there was an ad, it's no big deal. You just scroll past. I think
Yeah.
it's actually a very unobtrusive way to do advertising. Perhaps, they also helped. I think Yahoo's seen some declining overall usage. Helps the numbers there.
I see. Increases engagement, how many minutes per visit. So you think there are metrics there that just make the overall
The cool
stock-
factor.
The cool factor.
Yeah, I mean, if Yahoo is able to get a higher multiple for those metrics than Tumblr itself would, it's worth it. I mean, Yahoo has a market cap of, 28, 29 billion?
Yeah. So yeah, they all of a sudden add 100 million uniques and X number of page views. It looks optically really good for them.
Yeah.
Length of visit goes up, everything.
For all the criticism of these past startups that haven't worked, I think Yahoo's been a smart acquirer.
They have.
in
Flickr,
fact,
Delicious, good acquisitions.
My colleague Tony Schneider, Oddpost, which became
Yahoo Mail.
Yahoo Mail. That's been probably one of the most successful acquisitions.
Yeah, I mean, Yahoo Mail is the anchor of Yahoo.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's how people get to the homepage in Yahoo Finance and Yahoo Sports is the little
Mail.
links for mail. And that was it Tony deserves a lot of credit. Was that the first Ajax, DHTML, email client?
It was right around there.
It was so compelling.
you
Was
could-
that 2002?
You can drag and drop.
2003?
I don't know the exact history.
2004?
It was before Gmail. And
Definitely.
they had kind of an outlook in the web browser, like you can drag and drop messages, things we take very much for granted now.
Yeah.
But that when people first saw that on the web, they just spazzed out.
You never pursued an ad model, did you? Or considered it?
We do ads kind of like Apple does ads. I mean, to the extent they help our users and, a little bit they help us. We do them, but it's not the main focus of our business. The core is really subscriptions.
People on your board or investors must have at some point said, why are we not pursuing advertising?
Oh, sure.
How did you convince them to not do that?
I think it's a combination of having a vision for something bigger, and two, also trying some things. I mean, we tried out some ad stuff, and the results were. I don't think it's good to be sort of religious about something without trying it. I mean, let's see the data. Let's see what it looks like. And I think that while odds can have certainly a short-term revenue boost, long-term, they're rough on engagement. And that's why I've never been really into advertising-centric models. Personally, my bias is certainly towards things where your customers are your users. Your customers aren't, you're not selling your users to some third-party ad server or advertiser.
Yeah. 10 years in as an entrepreneur, you have this huge platform that 18% of the web is using. That is an incredible gift. You have scale, as few businesses do. But it's also a burden. You have to maintain such a huge code base and so many people are relying on you. How do you manage innovation versus maintenance? Technical debt.
Yeah.
It's hard,
I think
isn't
it's
it?
similar to any project, to be honest. Software folks have learned that ground-up rewrites are a bad idea. You create as many new bugs as you fix. And,
Is that true? Yeah. I mean, Joe Spolsky said that on a recent episode, that a total rewrite is usually total death.
Yeah, and because also in the time that you're doing the rewrite, because let's say it's taken us 10 years to develop WordPress so far.
Yeah.
Even if we're really, really good, let's say it takes us 3 years to rewrite it, 2 years to rewrite it, in that time a lot is going to change. And you're kind of, if we're lucky at the end, we end up with something that does what it does today, just with a slightly different backend.
Right.
So the approach we take is we try to, we'd have a very iterative schedule. So every release of WordPress is plus 0.1. So it goes 3.5, 3.6, 3.9, and then 4.0. It just goes in order. And we try to do 2 to 3 major releases per year of the core software. And just every single one, there's a user-facing feature or two. But also on the back end, we end up rewriting or refactoring anywhere from 10 to 15% of the code. So that works out is that from release to release, it's not a huge deal. But if you look over like 3.5 versus 3.0, completely different, both from the front end and the back end. So it allows us to be kind of constantly relaunching the software. To be honest, WordPress has kind of had 4 now major iterations that you could almost call different software, all under the name WordPress. But still keep shipping and iterating and getting improvements in the hands of our users.
Where do you think you'll be in 5 or 10 years? Where do you think this ship is headed? Because a lot of people have looked at the company and you and said, like, is he going to do this forever? Or is there a destination in mind? Like, I don't think anybody's ever taken, I guess Vignette went public, right? So a venture-backed business, after 7, 8, 9, 10 years, there's an expectation that something happens, an exit of, either through a liquidity event of an IPO or a sale, right? Tumblr went through that and all kinds of other people. It doesn't seem like you're very apt to sell the company, so that means the only possibility is to IPO. What are your thoughts on that? What are your board's thoughts on that? I mean, you have investors for a long time. They're steady.
Our board's incredibly supportive and always has been. I mean, that's been one of the ways we've been able to build the business we have, is that they have supported us, even when I was making mistakes or perhaps having to learn things the hard way, which is you sometimes need to do as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
And
painful, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was your biggest mistake? Now you look at it, you have a little bit of clarity now. I mean, you look back. Well, how old are you now? I don't even.
29.
You're 29. So wow, you started the whole thing when you were 19.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I mean, you were the you were the Zuckerberg of your day, in a way.
Oh, no, but it was fun.
No, people did like look at you as like this, like, wow, who is this like kid who is just so awesome at doing this? I remember Brian Alvin, my partner on Weblogs Inc., and I said, well, who is this person making all this noise over here when MovableType is doing this over here? And he said, yeah, what he's doing is actually, Brian Alvin called it. He said, like, WordPress is going to kill MovableType. Like, it's so much better. Like he called it like from day one. He knew that you were gonna beat them. But
I've always had a ton of respect for Brian.
you guys have both built multiple CMSs and been through the war. You both know the pain of building a content management system.
There's a very small cohort of people who are like obsessed with CMSs, and actually Ev Williams is one of them.
He is with Medium now.
That you kind of, it's like it's your white whale. You keep coming back to it over and over, no matter how many times you've done it.
What do you think of what he's doing with Medium? You have to look at that and say, yeah, really interesting, huh? What is he doing? What do you think he's doing?
You should ask him.
I had him on the program. I have a pretty good idea, and I had a 2-hour meeting with him discussing it. But what do you think he's doing?
I think they're certainly doing some interesting and innovative things from an interface point of view. But
how so? How is the interface innovative?
just the idea of no backend. You're editing sort of on the front end. Some cool collaborative features.
So you don't
cool
log
WYSIWYG
into
features.
the admin panel. You just click, and the front end is the back end.
Yeah, a nice unified design. Everything's responsive. It's very nice. Super well implemented, as you would expect from an entrepreneur with a background of Ev.
Yeah, blogger and Twitter, obviously.
I feel kind of like when I imagine Medium 5 years from now.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's taken out like HuffPo.
Yes.
They're paying authors to write for the sites.
Are they paying authors?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Huh. I couldn't tell if they were getting paid or not, or they're paying them with just putting them on the top level.
I'm sure there's some of that as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of an exclusive thing to be on
Yeah.
it. They're curating content. They'll professionally edit your post.
Yes.
And to me, that feels like, you know, maybe it's like a long form, non-link baity HuffPo down the line.
Trying to correct the sort of what blogging has devolved. I mean, blogging, when it started, it felt like it was, I don't want to say highbrow, but it felt like it was very authentic. Like these were people who really deserved to not have an editor. They deserved to be authentic. And then Business Insider, Huffington Post sort of took it down to this like very base level of like, here's a slideshow, here's a link baiting headline, here's some SEO garbage. I'm going to reblog and not put an author's name on it.
I think it would be unfair, though, to look at those, even the top 100 blogs, including those, TechCrunch, et cetera, and say that's what blogging is. Because there's, just on WordPress.com, close to 50,000 new blogs being created every day.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of
It's not
people.
one thing, but when you look at the high end of blogging,
Well, I would say that's
people
those
with
are
over 1 million people a
micro-publishers.
day.
Those are micro-publishers. Those are people who are disrupting older publishers. You made this playbook in a lot of
Right,
ways.
but
you did it in a classier way, but
well, I don't think we ever went for let's waste the audience time
no.
and let's steal other people's work, rewrite it because they're behind a paywall, or rewrite it without putting an author's name on it to get the SEO traffic and beat them in the SEO game, which I feel is the sort of like ugly part of what blogging has become.
Certainly, some people do that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
also,
Business
I look at
Insider and Huffington
something.
Post do it.
I look at like a BuzzFeed, and I see, yes, there are the listicles and things like that, but there's also some really cool stuff happening.
To me, they're a little different because that's high and low. I call that.
Yeah.
It's high and low. Like, okay, here's your kittens and boobies and kittens over here, but then here's somebody who has something really intelligent to say. So it's almost like taking the best of medium and then inserting boobies and kittens.
And to some extent,
But Huffington Post, I consider, like, let's do SEO spam over here and have people in India or people without even putting a byline on it. They got called out for this, obviously, but they were just churning out stories with, like, unbylined articles.
I think some of that's also just organizational hypergrowth. You know, when you
Yeah.
put people with these expectations and everything, there's going to be some employees that probably do something that, like, you as the founder would not condone.
Right.
That just happens. I don't want to attribute
that
that
was
to,
at
like,
the-
all of HuffPo, but, like,
Well, I would say that was a directive
I know
from
you
the
feel
top.
more strongly
No,
about
I
this.
mean, you're a very gracious guy, but it was a directive from the top. And Henry Blodgett is one of the most buzzed about publishers because he's relentless in pursuing traffic. But I do think if you get relentless in pursuing traffic, you can make an airplane go very fast by pointing the nose towards the earth. Right?
That's true. Yeah.
I don't know that
Gravity
it's
kicks
sustainable.
in.
Yeah, I don't know that's sustainable. I think the airplane starts ripping apart. Things start falling off the airplane, and people on the airplane start getting sick of it.
The interesting thing from our vantage point is that, I mean, well, we see the traffic of all these sites.
Yeah.
We run a lot of them. And it's impressive what they've been able to do and build.
Amazing.
Including the major media like CNN and New York Times embracing blogs as well. But it's utterly dwarfed by the billions and billions and billions of page views happening across tens of millions of blogs.
The long tail and the mid tail is a reality.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
And yes, it's personal stuff, but it's also, I mean, some of my favorite blogs to follow are authors. Like Dan Ariely is one of my favorite. His first big book was called Predictably Irrational. He's a behavioral economist. His blog is great.
Yeah.
Like, just out and out great. Steven Pinker, all these guys, they all blog as well. I think that when you get people who are passionate about writing, they do it. And maybe high and low, just as the low is a little bit higher. Like New Yorker has the cartoons.
Yes.
Low.
That's their low.
By some
like,
definition.
yeah, of course
they
it
have
is.
the poems. They have sort of
Yeah.
the snark, funny things.
And
they
now
do.
they even started a tech blog. I don't know if you've seen that. They have a tech blog now.
Tech blog. I know Atlantic's been doing some really cool stuff.
The
including
Atlantic
with Q
Wire is amazing. I don't know if you've seen the Atlantic Wire, which is sort of like their like pure blog platform.
Well,
They
I
use
love-
WordPress or
They do. Well, for Quartz. That's what is what I was
Quartz
referring
is
to.
based on WordPress.
It's WordPress.com VIP.
Well, what do you think of
actually.
Quartz? That is an interface that I saw and I said, what did you say? Very
I think it's
interesting, yeah.
awesome. They did.
Why is it awesome?
They did, I think, really innovative things with every post is like a homepage. You finish a post, you keep scrolling. They show you the next post. The URLs are smart. They change. I think they did very smart things around that.
And the native advertising in between that infinite scrolling.
Absolutely. They did it, I think, very elegantly. And it's one of the few places I can think of the past year where I've read the ad articles.
I did too. I was like, because I didn't know what I was doing, and I was like, oh, Chevron is doing something. What does Chevron have to do with this story? And then I was like, oh, wait, it's an ad, it's a native ad in between those things. What ad did you read? Do you remember?
I don't
Scientology?
No.
That was The Atlantic that put the Scientology native ad on the top.
Oh, they did?
Remember that one?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, The Atlantic got into a real storm because they made the top story
Huh.
like Scientology's growing, and it just was an advertorial, and they just...
Huh.
If it had been for the Chevy Impala or for the Chevy Volt or something, the native advertising would be more aligned with the gestalt of the...
What people expect to see advertising for, yeah.
Yeah. When you take a bunch of atheists and then put a Scientology ad in front of them, they're going to have a reaction.
But I'm also biased because QZ is a WordPress.com VIP and has been from the start. So it's been cool other publishers looking at it and be like, oh, we can do that on the platform?
Right.
And it wasn't that hard, to be honest. Like, it's a lot of the innovation there is on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
It's HTML and CSS and JavaScript.
It's this fluid HTML that works across tablets.
That's another thing.
Mobile.
It's responsive.
It's responsive.
It looks
But
great
what
on
does
everything.
What does it mean when a layperson hears, or somebody who's not a web designer hears, it's responsive, it's fluid? What does that mean, and why is it important?
Sure. I'll say tech first and then layperson.
Yeah, great.
From a technical point of view, it means that you have a single code base that adapts to the screen size. So to a regular person, they don't know it's the same code loading, but it looks perfect on a phone. It looks like it was designed for a phone, a tablet, whatever. And you can often play with it in your browser. Like, let's say you have the window and you just start making it smaller, and you'll see the design adapt as you make it smaller.
That's adaptive, responsive, fluid design. All the same
term
word.
web designers use is responsive generally.
They say responsive.
Yeah,
But I guess adaptive.
because it
fluid.
responds to the screen port, the
Yes.
size of the screen.
Now, when it does that technically, is it aware of what device it is, and is that why it's doing that, or is it just aware of the screen dimension?
So
technically?
CSS provides some variables around both screen density and viewport size. And so basically you say, okay, when it gets below this size, switch some of the design around.
Got it.
So
So now I got narrow because somebody decided to put like their iTunes in the same 27-inch monitor, and instead of being 3 columns wide, I'm 2,
Sure.
or something to that effect. Or I flip my iPad from one dimension to the other.
And it works up as well. Like, I think
Yeah.
good responsive designs, when someone has, the 27-inch maxed out display, should still be readable. Like, the text shouldn't be this long. It should still
Where it
follow
burns
the
your eyes
typography.
out, where it's like you have to read like a paragraph goes from all the way left to right on 27-inch monitor.
Yeah.
That kills the experience. And Quartz was done under GPL, so all that innovation could be leveraged down the road.
So the themes that aren't distributed don't need to be GPL.
Ah,
So that's another thing people don't understand about it. So let's say you paid someone to design a new calcanis.com.
Yeah.
That belongs to you.
that's copyrighted.
Well, everything's copyrighted,
Right.
including GPL software.
Right.
But it's if you started offering it for download
Ah.
or selling it, the Calcanis theme,
Yeah.
that would need to be GPL. But as long as
Right.
you're running it for yourself, it's not being under the GPL distributed.
So back to that conversation. Still confusing. You got in a war with some of those theme people, huh?
Oh, yeah. It was, we're very principled, and so we wanted to stick to it.
Yeah.
And other communities that have been less principled about this have seen a bit of a balkanization and atrophy of their basically plugins and themes.
And what happens in that?
Lots of things happen. Users get frustrated because they signed up for this thing that has a lot of awesome freedoms associated with it, but then they add on this thing that takes them all away. Maybe it has crappy DRM or something like that. Often the community becomes balkanized because instead of like you and me collaborating on making the same thing, you're making $20 and I'm making $20 and we're not going to work together because we're each sort of doing our own thing. There's no incentive to. The core platform often, so let's say you're developed an awesome plugin that does just something cool, makes a great widget. And at one point we say, wow, 80% of WordPress users would really love this widget. Like, let's put it into the core software so everyone can use it. If in WordPress, you're really excited. That's like
Yeah.
a huge honor. It's like
Right.
like winning a Grammy or something.
Right.
And you get involved with the core code and everything. If you were paying your mortgage because of that widget,
Kind of a bummer.
you'd be like, oh man, now
Just put my Twitter button in your thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we're going to do it eventually. I mean, the Twitter button needs to be part of the software. We never got the answer to, as an entrepreneur, your biggest mistakes, biggest Well, there's no regrets. I mean, you're running such a successful business. What do you think were the mistakes along the way where you could have made a better decision, and you look back on it and go, that was a big lesson there for me, Matt Mullenweg?
Yeah. The one that really stands out, and I wrote about in the 10-year post, I alluded to, was in 2005. I allowed advertising that ended up being just blatant spam on WordPress.org, the community website. And that was a huge blow up in the community. It blew up in mainstream as well. It was on MSNBC, and like a bunch of mainstream press covered it. And a huge mistake. I learned a lot about crisis management in that as well.
What did you learn about crisis management? It sucks.
Where I think people make mistakes there is when they try to I'm trying to think of a good word to use for this. When they sort of skirt around the issue, they're like, oh, let's say I insulted you, and you're like, oh, I feel bad. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry that you feel bad.
Yeah. Wait, great way to say it. I'm sorry that, you let your feelings be hurt. I'm sorry you're so sensitive, Jason.
And companies do that all the time.
Yeah.
And even when they we apologize for
Fake apologies.
We apologize for the inconvenience. It's not an inconvenience. My flight is delayed. I'm gonna miss dinner, or really be real about it. So
you didn't come out quick enough and say you were kind of rationalizing it or justifying it or trying to explain your thinking, and people needed to grow up a little bit, or people had to deal with it.
I think the two things that I would recommend to any entrepreneur who's in a similar situation, they fix it as soon as possible. That's the first thing I did. I took it all down.
Yeah. So we fixed the problem.
Fix it.
Right.
And then just own up to it.
Yeah.
You just say, wow, I screwed up.
Well, Facebook's going through this just today and yesterday. They have a terms of service that doesn't allow breasts on the service. So if you post a picture of breastfeeding, one of the more beautiful, amazing things that you'll see as a father or whatever, hopefully someday for you, oh my God, beautiful, wonderful. You can flag that, and it gets taken down on Facebook. So there's a big controversy the last couple of years over this, and women doing breastfeeding sit-ins and stuff like that on Facebook. But if you post humor about beating women, throwing them down the stairs, drugging them, roofing them, raping them, rape humor is allowed. And they had yesterday or the day before 50,000 people use the Facebook rape tag on Facebook, FB rape, pound FB rape, and sure enough, it's very smart people, savvy consumers started CCing advertisers, like JCPenney. Look at your ad next to this pound FB rape post that Facebook refuses to take down. Facebook responded 3 days later and hey, we are reconsidering our position on this. We may allow people to breastfeed on Facebook and not allow people to make jokes about roofing people.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if you want to be in the censorship business at all if people are comedians. If a comedian made a joke about rape.
It's tough.
That's ugly.
I mean...
you have that issue. If you have Nazi skinheads on WordPress.com, or is hate speech not allowed? And how do you deal with that?
On WordPress.com, we have a terms of service as well.
Okay, let's get to the hate speech part.
No hate speech.
No hate speech.
Although there's certainly people start it, and we might not see it right away or things like that.
So.
And there's also one person's hate speech might be another person's revolutionary. And so you definitely end up, much of it is subjective. And there's some things that are pretty clear and some things that aren't.
Yeah, if I start a Nazi WordPress theme in a blog, you're going to shut it down.
It's also contextual, to your culture. I remember when I went to China 3 or 4 years ago, they would say, the Dalai Lama and Tibetans are terrorists. So the same way that someone might say we should shut down an Al-Qaeda site, they feel like they should be shut down. Here we have a different perspective on that. Right. But it just kind of shows that it can be very contextual. And the easiest things to deal with are the clear-cut stuff, spam, the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But beyond that, you're drawing a line someplace. Tumblr chose to draw a line someplace different around nudity as well.
Yeah, they're just hey, porn all the time.
There's artistic expressions of nudity.
Love-making.
Of love-making, too.
Of love-making.
Baby-making. It can be a beautiful thing, as you said
It can be a
earlier.
beautiful thing, baby-making. Right, exactly.
But I mean, that's just one of those, every service kind of has to.
Do you allow porn on WordPress.com?
We don't.
You don't.
Every service has to decide the cultural mores, or often the community decides it for them, of that particular thing. And when you get to the scale of hundreds of millions or a billion users like Facebook or Google, you kind of have just humanity. So you have everything there.
So it's basically like saying mankind.
Yeah, it's
Humankind.
great when you're 30, 40 million users because you can have kind of like-minded people.
Yeah.
And a social mores and sort of the community can work well under that. When you get
True scale.
10x that, you don't. There's enough different points of views that are valid in their own way.
So if you wanted to do porn with WordPress, you just got to download the software, of the open source software, and put up your own server.
Sure.
And I'm sure they do.
Very much.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that is difficult, especially it used to be difficult for me, that idea that people are using the software to make hate sites and things like that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, how many open source people and myself think about it is just that freedom of speech is important. That I might not agree with what you say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it.
Right.
I personally believe that the best way to address those sorts of things is with more speech, with more people talking
More
about it,
sunlight.
with more good stuff.
Yeah.
Not necessarily trying to squish the bad stuff because they'll just move someplace else over and
Right.
over.
And it also starts a dialogue. I mean, you were attracted to blogging because you love to talk and debate, and we've had drinks late into the night talking about kinds of all things over the years. Like, you like that.
I enjoy it personally.
Yeah. It does make things better.
I know you don't like to argue with people.
No,
but-
I never ever started any kind of a blog war. I think somebody at some point attributed link baiting to me. And I was like, no, I never came up with that term. But then I just decided, I wrote this was the blog post that got me the most inbound links ever, was the rules of link baiting. And I said, I don't know if you remember this post, but I said, if you want me to link to you, this is the rule. These are the rules. Number one, you write something extremely complimentary about my Bulldogs, the Knicks, or something I've written previously. Number two, and I just listed do all these things, and then I will absolutely link back to you. And then people wrote them, and I linked back to them. And every post would start, greetings and salutations, Jason. I really enjoyed your piece that you wrote about Gmail. And I hope that Taurus and Fondue are great. You're beautiful Bulldogs. And then they would write their actual blog post. And I would read it. It shot me right to the top of SEO and to
Technorati 100 or
Technorati.
something.
I was like, wow, it's that easy to game.
I miss those services. Technorati, Feedster, all those.
You remember Technorati was amazing. We'd be at a conference like this, and what would be on everybody's screen?
Technorati.
And why?
Because you'd see a cross-platform view of the conversation.
Yeah.
Right now, we all just look at the Twitter hashtag or something. It was really a very cool view. They'd pull into Flickr photos and the Twitter early on, actually.
Yeah.
2005, 2006-ish. All the blog posts and in real time, and it was awesome. Because people would also write longer things about conferences, which I miss a little bit.
Yeah, people would actually write, I'm going to write a blog post about today, or two.
Yeah.
I'm going to put down 800 words, 600 words, as opposed to the short stuff. Twitter or Facebook, which company is more important, ultimately, and why?
You use Twitter more, don't you?
Well, I'm asking Matt Mullenweg. You have this great way of reversing you should have your own interview show. But you're on mine, so you answer. Audience doesn't care about me. They're sick of me. But
I've seen a lot of you, over 300
exactly.
episodes.
They're sick of my opinion. They want yours.
For the independent web, I have more hope for Twitter. The Facebook, it seems the model, if you take it to its logical conclusions, is a lot about keeping people on the site. And Twitter, through its nature, sends people elsewhere, which I think is ultimately more how the web works. That said, Twitter has done a number of things around the developer API. They turned off all their RSS feeds. I mean, they've done a lot of things that I don't agree with, and that I don't think they have to be honest, because they seem to be on a trajectory where they don't need to, squeeze the little guys. So, ultimately, I like that. And it also super mobile native. I mean, Twitter is designed for short, readable, digestible things. You can scan it so
RSS
easily.
Dead now? I mean, you have Twitter turning it off, and you have Google Reader being shut down. These are two of the most important components of it. It's only a matter of time before Google turns off FeedBurner.
Yeah, I think that those are more symptoms of other things rather than saying RSS is dead or not.
Right, okay.
It's
It's,
kinda
it's a
like-
catchy phrase, but
Yeah, it's
unpack
kind of
it.
like saying the web is dead, which
Okay.
people have also done articles on.
Sure.
Because there's mobile apps doesn't mean the web is dead.
Right.
RSS is still the number one transport mechanism for what it does. But in two situations, Google had a product that wasn't very popular, and they have sort of this fetish with closing things down. So like,
Love
oh,
it.
that one, let's close that down.
Kill it.
And that happened to have a small but passionate audience, often of press people, so
Yeah.
it got a lot of coverage that
Yeah.
relied on it. And then for Twitter, I think that they're really trying to cut down on unauthenticated API access. And an RSS feed is kind of like an unauthenticated API by design.
It was exactly designed to be that. Anybody could take this data and make it portable. You don't have to write a scraping script.
And they want you to go through their developer thing to have access to any content on Twitter. For a number of good reasons. I just kind of wish they
What
didn't.
are the good
because it's-
reasons for that? I kind of feel like I don't know that there are good reasons. I feel like I've invested so much into Twitter that they should keep it open and let 1,000 flowers bloom. I don't understand this obsession with shutting down access to their data or being in command control mode.
I would not be surprised if a quarter to a third of their servers are serving feed traffic, unauthenticated feed traffic. Which, at scale costs a lot of money, probably tens of millions of dollars. People are misusing the content, because you don't agree to that terms of service that you do when you sign up as a developer. So they might be doing things that are bad for their users or bad for Twitter, which they are a business and they're very
Right.
focused on that right now. Those are probably the two strongest reasons. I think that cost, we have the same ones. I think that cost is worth it for the openness of the web, of the independent web. But every business makes that call themselves. I'm hopeful for Twitter. I kind of hope that once they get maybe more of their finance in order and everything like that,
More revenue, more stability.
that
And
they'll
they
come back a little bit because I feel like they get it.
They do get it. And yeah, maybe it was a technical debt kind of thing. Like this is too much stress on the system. Like they're getting suffocated under their own popularity. Like everybody wants to remix the Twitter feed for some goal.
A lot of times these decisions aren't made with like a grand scheme, like, oh, let's kill RSS. It's like an engineer way down the line, like doesn't want to maintain it anymore or has different priorities or something like that. And things get shut off like
What
that.
do you think of Dave Weiner's legacy in blogging, podcasting, and technology?
Immeasurable.
Immeasurable.
Yeah.
How so? What impact has that had on you in WordPress?
I mean, he did started a lot of things that I think him and goodness, the name's escaping me. Photo.net. Who's the fellow? Ars Technica or Ars Digita before?
Yeah.
Paul.
It'll come to us.
Yes, I'll think of it in a second.
What is he doing
apologize, Paul. He actually flies helicopters and teaches at MIT.
Oh, okay.
He wrote one of the first web development books too.
Got it.
And spoke at WordCamp a few years ago. I mean, they did community and blogging respectively before anyone else, including things that very much resemble Twitter today and WordPress today, and forecast a lot of it. So I think it's impossible to overstate the impact that have on early versions of Blogger, early versions of Twitter, early versions of WordPress.